It is 14 minutes past 4 and it's Tuesday afternoon. We all know what that means. Creation Ministries International. And this afternoon we have Dr. Ron Neller on the line. Good afternoon, Dr. Ron.
Good afternoon, Mick. How are you going?
Oh, I'm going fabulously. Of course, we just had Easter. I ate too much chocolate. But yeah, look, it didn't damage me too much. What about yourself?
Limited chocolate. Yeah, I need to be cautious.
So do I, but I kind of tend to just say, oh, look, it's Easter, blow it. So I had too much chocolate and probably too much sugary chocolate, which I'm not meant to have. Yes, well, and of course, Easter's about a lot more than chocolate, though. And I believe this afternoon, we're going to talk a little bit about Easter. A good question for you. Why is Easter, especially the resurrection, an emotional period?
Good question. Because we certainly go through a lot of emotions over Easter, don't we?
Yep.
I mean, prior to the arrest at the cross, before the cross, we do feel somewhat grieved, heavy-hearted. Come Good Friday, it's interesting within a church and within Christian families, we feel a bit overwhelmed, I guess. We feel humbled. We're certainly humbled by that, and the resurrection, that's an incredible day when we feel alive and renewed from an emotional point of view. And now, even as you and I speak, there's a sense across the church and the Christian community and that we're transformed, we're strengthened, we're thankful.
Yep.
So it's a fascinating period, isn't it? It's where we are emotionally torn from one end to the other, where we sort of go through, like humbled by the cross.
Yep.
But then grateful of his sacrifice, which sounds strange, and filled with joy at the resurrection. And I think that particularly is an important message for those who that Easter, and particularly the resurrection. I think it's an emotionally incredibly wonderful but turbulent period. And I guess the question I always ask when you put up there is why? Why do we go through that?
Yes. Well, my mother-in-law even said to me, she goes, "Oh, how was your Good Friday?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, it was great, albeit, the Good Friday where Jesus was put on the cross." And she goes, "But how exciting was it? Look what he's done for all of us." And I thought, yeah, you're right. I was kind of coming at it from the wrong angle there.
Yes, you see that in churches. As you know, I go to many churches, and and speak at many churches. It's I think non-Christians find a bit of a struggle with those of us who actually celebrate the crucifixion of Christ, because we're aware now. Even the disciples weren't aware of what was happening, but we are aware of what that meant and what it led to. So we're all even though we know that, we're still, I think, as you say, emotionally we're torn from one end to the other over that weekend.
Yes. Absolutely. Particularly when you think about what he really did for us on that Friday. I mean, that's if you sort of sit there and just focus on it, it can bring you down a little bit. But then, yes, it's an emotional, because you go from torn to shreds to massively on high.
Yes, exactly. And I think the emotions, and this is my perception as someone who studies the book of Genesis, I think those emotions are actually driven by the connection between the book of Genesis and the gospel message.
Yes, well, what are those connections between the resurrection and the book of Genesis?
Well, you can look at it from different angles, actually. I think we come to understand, in Genesis 3, we talk about death, and this is an emotional thing. Sin enters in Genesis 3, death enters, and we're surely going to die, and we're separated from God. That's an incredible message of Genesis. But then the resurrection helps us to understand what the resurrection is. It's about death is defeated. Our separation from Christ, from God, is overcome. And we come to grips with the sin's consequences are completely reversed. So I think that's a good point to start with, because my point there, I guess, is if we're without Genesis, then death has no clear origin to us. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I think that's what puts a lot of fear in people. They don't understand Genesis, therefore death has no clear origin and scares them. But with the resurrection that we experienced over and remembered over the weekend, death, without the resurrection, I should say, then death has no solution.
Mm.
And that's why I think a lot of people who are not Christians really struggle with death.
Yes.
That without that resurrection, there is no solution to this. So that's something that I've personally been through. I've stood there during a brain tumor, and basically stood there on the edge of death. And it's interesting how doctors look at patients and they go, "Well, some of you are not so much afraid," But that's people who, as you and I do, we understand that death does have a solution. It's the resurrection of Christ. I guess also if you look at Genesis, and this is where it comes in very good for CMI. We look at all these things. Is that right after the fall? If we look at the seed of the woman, that's an incredible piece of scripture. That one, the seed of the woman crushed the serpent's head, and I guess what the resurrection shows us, in linking Genesis to the resurrection again, is that Satan is defeated. Sin is conquered, the promise is fulfilled, and so our earlier problem of not understanding death, well, if we don't have resurrection, also then the promise remains incomplete. We don't see it, and I think these sort of issues, because they touch on death and so on, and sin and all the rest, I think we're very much challenged by all of that. But I guess what I'm trying to get at there, coming back to your comment there, Mick, is that I don't think we fully understand the resurrection until we fully understand Genesis and what happened to us and what that resurrection meant to us. I think a final point there is simply, you could say, Genesis says we're made from dust and we'll return to dust because of sin.
Yep.
Which is, that's clear cut in Genesis 3 again. But the resurrection that we just celebrated over this weekend reverses this. The body is raised. Death is not the end.
Yes.
We're going to be restored beyond our original state. That's just incredible. So that's why I guess as a creation ministry person, I love understanding the book of Genesis far more deeply than most people will explore, because it really helps us build connection, not just to the resurrection, but much other parts of the Bible as well. But I think over that weekend, that's what makes it so emotional. Knowing connection just goes, whoa, okay, now I understand it. So
I know our church had a crosswalk where they took a cross, it's carried a cross up to the top of one of our local landmarks, the Skillion out at Terrigal. And obviously they walk past, many, 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 many people. It's a centre of our tourist town. And a lot of people then can ask the question. But at the same time, we see, news articles with President Trump standing there with a giant rabbit. Not everyone gets to really, that message doesn't sink in all the time the way it really should.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's why, and I think you and I have spoken about this before, it's why Paul, amongst the Gentiles, always spoke of creation. And when you look at all of his books, he was not speaking to the Jewish, he was speaking to the Gentiles, and to help them understand their origins and why we are sinful and why we have fallen, you have to come to grips with the book of Genesis. And so, yes, there's that message of Genesis is so powerful, and we can use that at an Easter period very clearly.
Yeah, some people say the book of Genesis is really a very colourful story at the start of the Bible. What would you say to that?
Well, I'm going to obviously disagree with that, because if we don't have Genesis, if we don't accept that Genesis is truthful and foundational, and so on, if we don't accept that, then sin and death and the very need for redemption that we celebrate over Easter is unclear. We don't even understand redemption if we don't understand Genesis.
Yep.
And of course, then without the resurrection, then the Genesis itself, as a book, remains a sort of an unfinished story.
Mm.
And that must confuse people as well. So both of those, if we don't understand, if we don't accept the book of Genesis as truthful, then I guess the most common question I ask people, particularly if they're Christian, and they say, I'm not sure the book of Genesis is truthful. I'm not sure Adam and Eve existed. I'm not sure if they sinned. My fundamental question to them is one that I hope is deep for them. I ask, well, why did Jesus have to die a physical death?
Yep.
If we're not the cause of sin, we're not the origin of sin and death, then why did Jesus have to die?
Yeah.
And I think that's what we come to understand in the Easter period, the resurrection period.
Yes.
And that's why I love connecting it back to the book of Genesis.
Yes.
I think it just helps us understand Easter far more deeply.
Yep.
And become far more of an emotional period.
Yes, absolutely. Look, we're going to go into a short break right now. I think, where am I? We've got, I think we'll put a bit of Jesus culture. We will run on and we'll come back to Dr. Ron Neller very shortly. Just remember, if you do have any questions for Dr. Ron, send them through to our text line, SMS 0401 949 949. If you have a question, we'll be able to answer it after the break. You're on 94.9. It's 24 minutes to 5, and I've got Dr. Ron Neller on the line from Creation Ministries International. And Dr. Ron, we have a question that's come through just during the break then. If mankind was not the cause of death, then Jesus didn't have to die. What do you think of that?
That's if we come back to the Bible from the Creation Ministries point of view, the one thing we do is we say the Bible is foundational, truthful, and consistent. In other words, we sinned. Adam and Eve sinned, which is us. We sinned, and death entered the world. And then we had to have for forgiveness. Of course, during the Old Testament, you had the pure lambs and so on sacrificed. But in the end, it had to be an incredible sacrifice, one that was beyond sin, one that was absolutely pure, and that's Christ Himself. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we cannot be recovered. I guess from our point of view, we look at the Bible as being internally consistent. In other words, Jesus Himself affirmed the book of Genesis. He never challenged it. Mm-hmm. He said there was creation. He was creation. There was Adam and Eve, and they did sin. There was marriage and so on. And I think what we have to do then is accept that fully, and that's called faith, actually. It's called faith. Yep. If we accept that, then I think it's critical, because if we say if we accept it, then we accept that Christ is trustworthy. We have to accept that Christ is trustworthy. We have to accept that Christ has affirmed Genesis, and then Genesis underpins His mission, that He had to be sacrificed. He Himself said so. He said He had to die in order to redeem us. And so, if death had not entered through sin, if there'd always been death around, then you've got to ask the part, well, then why did Jesus have to die physically? Is what I'm talking about. Why couldn't He die a spiritual death? Yes. Because death is not natural. It was never natural. That's what the Bible says. It's a result of the fall. That's where it comes from. And so the only way out of that is for the ultimate sacrifice to be made, and Christ carried that. Yeah. Why did the fall have to happen so quickly? Yeah, a good question, isn't it? Well, I think there's an interesting point there that a lot of people they say, why did God create us so that there could be a fall? That's an interesting comment as well. But the point is, God loves us as a father, and a father will give you choice. If we didn't have choice, then we're nothing but robotic, almost AI of humans, yes. Sort of robotic type. Now, He gave us choice. Why? Because He loves us beyond our understanding.
Yep.
He gave us choice as you give children choice to learn and to grow. And we made the wrong choice.
Yeah.
I think he didn't create us to control us. Not like that. He
Yep.
created us to love us and to be a part of his creation that he had done. I think it's he's very much founded on his love.
I guess also, when I say that, why did they have to sin so quickly? If it was anybody else, it would probably have taken less time.
Well, that was my question. When I first heard of this, when I first became a Christian, my first thought was, I am going to speak to Adam when I get there. I have got some words to say. And it took me a nanosecond to realise I am Adam.
Yeah.
I would have done the same thing.
Yeah. Who wants to throw the first rock?
That's right. We are naive or prideful or arrogant if we think we're not Adam.
Mm.
The question's good and certainly worth exploring deeper.
Yes.
Certainly a lot of books on the CMI website as well. And those sort of questions, by the way, can be actually submitted to Creation Ministries.
Okay.
We love those questions, and we will answer them. We will get the best person. I mean, here I am, an earth scientist trying to explain theology. That's good. But the point is, we will send those questions to people who really, really understand the answers, have many years of training and experience in them, and they will send you an email response.
Yes.
So if you go online and look at that, you can certainly submit any questions that anyone else may have as well that remain uncertain of. We love doing it.
Yes. How often do you speak to groups of people, whether it be on the radio or a church or actually visiting some sort of group?
It'll vary from year to year. I've come close to doing 100 talks within 1 year. So,
wow.
Because we will do weeknight talks. Churches will organise community events. Yep. Schools will organise school events. We go to youth groups run by churches, women's groups, all sorts of things, as well as church services. And often a church will put on 2 services on a weekend when we're there. They'll have their morning service, but then they might put on a second one and be a bit more relaxed and really want to then have a Q&A session, which becomes really exciting for us as well. We love the Q&As. And so, we wouldn't be doing less than 40 to 50 churches per year, but we do many other events as well. I absolutely love it, to be honest.
Is your main topic about sort of earth science?
Usually, but I do talk a lot about fossil formation, those sort of things. I've even given talks on aliens, of all things, in Japan. So a lot of those sort of different topics. So the church can choose its topic, by the way.
Yep.
Most of us can handle a range of topics.
Yes.
But often they want a particular type of speaker and so on. But yeah, look, we have a few people on the road. We've got great support groups all around the country who look after us, keep us our costs down, and they accommodate us, they transport us. And it's just wonderful.
Of course, there's
so we can keep on the road.
Yeah, and CMI's all over the world as well. Do you travel much overseas?
Yes, not. We might travel once a year overseas, but not every year. We try to send at least one speaker over. My wife and I, Julie, we went to speak last year in Malaysia and Singapore. So we spoke in an Islamic country there, and that was an experience. But we also went to the UK. So we spoke in Ireland itself, outside the UK, Ireland, Northern Ireland, Wales, England. And we spoke all across there. So we travel for a number of months on those trips. But no, we will travel to other countries. If we don't have an office there, we will certainly try and travel there and do an intense program. I can tell you, when I was over in England and Ireland and Wales, my wife and I were basically, how would you call it, exhausted at the end of 1 month.
Yes, I can imagine.
2 churches a day, driving between them, carrying all our resources, but we loved it. So no, we certainly across all of Australia. New Zealand, but we will travel around much other parts of the world. And usually we have a supporter who does that, helps us through that as well.
Right.
Who will pay for, financially help us do that.
Yes.
And we live entirely by donations. We do not make money on our products. It's designed for the purchase people to actually get the best what they can for their dollar, because we would love them to pass it on. So our goal is not to make money on those. We survive by donations. That's how we do this.
One thing I've always wondered, do you go to CMI or did they come to you to grab you?
Oh, that was an interesting experience, that one. That one was a strange one because I became a creationist and thought I was the only one in the world. I'd never heard of CMI. And I eventually heard of CMI. I'd written an article and I asked them to edit it. And when they read it, they went, "Oh, this guy writes well, so let's call him down for lunch." And I went down for lunch, and we were highly confused with each other because I didn't expect to be working with those guys.
Yep.
I just wanted an editing of an article. That's all I wanted. And so we both became confused with each other. It took us another 6 months to realise what we both felt, that I love them, they love me, but we actually couldn't even communicate that.
Okay.
When we did, we just all laughed, and since then I've just thoroughly enjoyed working with them as a team.
Yes, well, of course, CMO's been around for a while in the magazine. There's plenty of issues out there of it. And I guess that's why there's so many thousands of pages of information on the Creation Ministries website.
That's right. There's over 15,000 articles for people to read. And it's written largely for them, not for scientists. It's written for the community so they will understand.
Well, I mean, that is a cool thing, though, that there are so many scientists involved with Creation Ministries, because so often we see in the media, in the secular media, that it's science versus the Christians. And it's almost as though there's two sides to it. And then we hear from Creation Ministries and there's a whole stack of scientists. And it's like, oh, okay, this is a little bit confusing, but it's also very refreshing because there's so many scientists agreeing with the Christian perspective.
Oh, absolutely. It's just that we're not allowed to express that in education, in a university or in schools, basically. And so what tends to happen is we become separated and isolated, but there are so many scientists of top quality. You know, I was slightly arrogant when I came to Creation Ministries. I thought I was quite good, but when I met the other scientists, I thought, oh my goodness, how brilliant some of these people. You know, and I thought, and they're Christians, and they work in ministry, and yet they're top scientists.
Oh, look, I've loved asking some of the questions. You know, some of you guys I've sort of said, so how did you become a Christian? And there's a few of them that have actually said, oh, we were trying to prove Christianity wrong. And they've literally become Christians because of it.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, my wife and I have been asked to publish ours because it is the strangest manner. We both resisted Christ. And in the end, we both came to Christ, which is fascinating. But the journey we went through of being scientists, you know, prideful and arrogant and assuming we understood everything, yet all the evidence that we researched, I researched for 35 years around the world, holding professorialships in Finland, China, and so on. All of it pointed back to the Bible. All of it pointed back to the book of Genesis. And in the end, you got a rock in a hard place. And but I still put up a fight.
Is this story on Creation Ministries at all?
No, it's not. No, I've been asked to share that more. And we can do that another time and another interview, because it people in churches just absolutely love hearing about it, because scientists, we do resist it. And so when you get scientists who in the end go, okay, no, and even just it all points to God.
Yes,
you then are really challenged because you've been raised to be leaders of society, professors, advisors to government, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But you find yourself then in a very difficult spot.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, look, we've come to the end of another week. Dr. Ron Neller, I would have loved to have gone into that story right now, but we don't have time. But definitely we've got to talk about that sometime soon. We do have you next week. Not sure what we'll be talking about yet. Depends on the news, depends on the questions that come through. and of course, what you plan to talk about as well. So, look, I've got to say thank you so much for another awesome week, and I'm looking forward to next week.
Likewise. Good to speak with you again, Nick.
You are on 94.9. It is 4:49.